Hey everybody, welcome back to Comic Frontline. This is a special e-panel. For those of you who don't know, an e-panel is where we have a guest or a group of guests, and we talk in kind of like a Comic-Con panel type format where we ask questions. If the viewers have questions, they can ask in the live chat, and we will ask them to the creator. And this time we have Madeleine Holly-Rosing. Is that the right way to say it?
Rosing.
Yeah. Rosing, okay.
Yeah, I hyphenated to make my husband happy.
Madeleine Holly-Rosing with us. So why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Well, you just did. I'm the writer-creator of the steampunk comic Boston Metaphysical Society, and also the writer of Kasai the Homecoming, both of which are on Kickstarter right now. My own creator-owned comic, Boston Metaphysical Society, is the original story is about an ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, and a genius scientist who battle supernatural forces in late 1800s Boston. It's a 6-issue miniseries, which we finished up and went to trade last year. And today, well, this month, actually, the new story that's out is a continuation of the series called The Scourge of the Mechanical Men. Features Granville Woods and Nikola Tesla having to work together to save Boston from a mysterious disease that turns human beings into machines. So, yes, very steampunky.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
Cool. All right, so you told us about the Boston Metaphysical, The Scourge of the Mechanical Men Kickstarter. How about the Kasai Kickstarter?
The Kasai Kickstarter, that one, besides being a ton of fun to write, it's my first superhero comic. I believe Brant is the letterer on it. You're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you.
And it's set in a world where superheroes are the norm, but some of them have chosen a career path of becoming pro wrestlers, of all things. And I would not have thought of that, but that's a great idea. I mean, what a great profession for a superhero. I mean, you got to pay the rent somehow, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And the young woman that I write about, Kasai, is half human, half fire demon. And she has to take a leave of absence from her job to go home to deal with an even greater challenge than she ever dealt with in the ring, and that happens to be her family. Particularly, you know, her father is full fire demon, demigod, and the antagonist is his sister, her aunt, who's the water goddess. So there's lots of action, but at its heart, it is a father-daughter story, and that's what drives it. But that was a lot of fun. I love writing action. I used to do it a lot when I was doing more screenwriting. And so this was like, yeah, I get to write action. I love that.
Yeah. It's a fun book to work on. I just have to say that too. So I'm enjoying it.
And Alessandro Mercola, who's doing the art, is just killing it.
Absolutely. I agree.
Brilliant.
So you are working and you're being a part of 2 different Kickstarters at once. And I know, you know, I've run one, I'm currently running another one. So I know that running a Kickstarter can be very stressful. How is it running 2 that kind of overlap and take place at the same time?
Well, with Boston Metaphysical, I'm running that exclusively. With Kasai, I'm not the project lead. Our editor is Marcel Dupree. Right. So I'm helping out on the side. But yeah, I'm not the one who, you know, strategized and set it all up and did all those fun things. So yeah, I'm just kind of helping out. And I think Brant, you are too in some respects, and we all are. I mean, we're a team, so we all help out.
Right.
All right. With Kasai and Boston Metaphysical, The Scourge of the Mechanical Men, both of them are 2 very different books. What drew you to write both of them?
Boston Metaphysical was originally a TV pilot that I wrote while I was getting my MFA in screenwriting in UCLA. And it had made the rounds, and people liked it, but it was a period piece and it was steampunk. And you have to understand, this is before steampunk actually hit mainstream and was a thing.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine suggested that I turn it into a comic. And so I went back to school, learned how to write a comic. I was not a comics person beforehand. And pretty much the rest is history. And in the midst of all that, I figured out, I really like writing comics. This is a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. There's a lot of similarities between producing a comic and producing a movie. They all require a team, and they all require collaboration. It's just the scale is different.
Yeah. And you don't have to pay for all those effects.
That's correct. That's the big upside.
Yeah.
And with Kasai, Marcel Dupree, our editor and the co-owner of Evolution Publishing and SFC Comics, we met while I was running my Kickstarter last year, because we cross-promoted with his comic, Delilah Blast, which is also a steampunk sci-fi comic. And he liked what I was doing, so he said, would you like to write Kasai? And so we talked a bit, and he gave me the background, and I said, yeah, I think I could do this, and I think you're going to be happy with it. So I guess everyone's been really happy with it. You've read it, Brant.
Oh yeah. It's really good. I can't say enough good things about it. So, all right.
Let's see.
So my question is, Kasai, if a wrestler who is also the daughter of a demigod, how do you make the story relatable to the average readers out there?
It's the relationship between her and her father. That doesn't change. That is the human part of it all. And it's also part of his character arc too, which you see later on in it's a 4-issue miniseries. But I mean, you have to make the relationships relatable, and since most of us have had a parent or a parent substitute in our lives, you can relate to some of the issues that she has to deal with him. And he does love her, but he demonstrates it in unusual ways. Not like a normal father, your average dad would nowadays, which is, by the way, very different than how fathers often comported themselves, say, 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. You see the relationship between fathers and their kids are on the whole very different between what they were 50 to 60 years ago in many instances. Sorry to digress here, because I just see this every day, and it's really wonderful, because I see dads out with their kids. I see dads taking their sons and daughters to Comic-Cons and all this other fun stuff, and being an integral part of their lives, and carrying the baby, and pushing the stroller down the street. And I can tell you, my father wouldn't have been caught dead doing any of that. And most men of his generation just would never. It just never would have happened. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting, the father-daughter dynamics. But yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, that's a great answer. And that is true, because like you said, they were very detached back in those generations. Yeah.
It was a way that a father was a man was supposed to appear in public, and a way, it was just the way it was back then. It was acceptable,
Mm-hmm.
That's weird, coming as a father who did most.
Well, again, it's not your generation. This generation is brought up a lot different than it was way back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, way back then. I'm like showing my age. I'm showing my age here, unfortunately.
I'm not that. I'm 41 years old, so I'm not a young kid. I'm 41 years old. My parents were my mother's in her 70s, so I know the generation you're talking about. Let's see. We have a comment from one of our viewers, JLS Comics. Jesse says, "Steampunk sci-fi. I like it." So
Nice.
that's a nice combination. So let's see. We all so Boston Metaphysical, The Scourge of the Mechanical Men stars two real historical figures. What made you decide to use those two in particular, and just real historical people?
Well, in the original 6-issue series, Granville Woods is a part of the Boston Metaphysical Society team, along with Samuel Hunter, who's the ex-Pinkerton detective, and Caitlin O'Sullivan, who is a medium and spirit photographer. They're essentially a paranormal detective agency. In the original series, Bell, Edison, Tesla, and Houdini are a major part of the storyline. Because there's a major, I call it the big bad, that each of them are trying to either destroy or contain or do something with, but they are all coming at it from different angles and have different attitudes towards it. So in the original series, you see the relationship between Tesla and Granville, which is not an amicable one. Basically, Tesla pisses everybody off. Yeah, I take a different tact with Tesla. I know he's an icon, and obviously he was brilliant. But yeah, I've changed him up a little bit, but he still has the obsessive quality that the real Tesla had. And Granville Woods, I discovered in my research, and he was just perfect. For the original TV pilot that I wrote. And so obviously I carried him over. And I have to say, he's probably my favorite character because he's often the smartest guy in the room. And he also has gotten lost in history, which is a shame because he is one of our most brilliant American scientists in history, and no one knows anything about him. Yeah, I mean, those were the times. So his contributions, they got buried. So I was very happy to unbury him and bring him out to the world.
Yeah, that's really cool that you're giving him a spotlight then.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. For anybody that doesn't know and might be curious, because I'm sure there are a lot of people, when you're writing historical characters like this, and we've seen a lot of different takes on Tesla and various characters like that, are there any considerations you have to have, like any permissions or anything like that? I don't know how quite to word it. I know, like with fictional characters, there's those that are in the public domain and those that you have to license. What's the protocol with historical figures?
It really depends on if they have. I know. First of all, I'm not a lawyer, so but my basic understanding is that if they have an estate that holds the rights to their image, then you need to deal with this as the estate and get permissions and licensing and things with that. With the figures I use, they don't have any, and they're used out there, all the time. And I would think that if Granville Woods' family, I do not think he had any children. In Scourge, he did in real life. He did have a brother. Laertes was his name, and they did start their own company in upstate New York later on. He may have some, descendants from maybe from his brother, but it's one of those things. It also depends on how long it was ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you can certainly write about Julius Caesar and no one's going to care.
Exactly.
But yeah, I don't think it's an issue for the characters I used, and particularly in the way I use them. So
Cool.
My question actually is, how much research for both books, Kasai and Boston Metaphysical, did you have to do before writing both stories?
A lot. For Boston Metaphysical, that research started actually years before I even thought of Boston Metaphysical. I had written a script called Stargazer for, if you've ever heard of the Sloan Fellowship, it's for films and scripts that focus on real science, accurate science, and showing scientists and engineers as real people and not caricatures. And so I submitted Stargazer to the Sloan Foundation. It actually, that script actually won the Sloan Fellowship, but that story is about a young Scottish American woman who came to this country pregnant, penniless, and abandoned by her husband. And she was hired by the director of the Harvard Observatory to be a maid. He saw her attention to detail and hired her to become one of his female computers. Now, they actually called them that. They were called female computers.
Yeah.
And they basically crunched all the numbers and reviewed all the plates, the black and white plates that they used to photograph stars on. And to make a long story short, she eventually discovered over 10,000 stars and developed her own stellar classification system.
Oh, wow. Her
name is Mina Fleming. She's a real person. So I had like stacks in my office. I mean, I had stuff from all over the world about her and Pickering and at the Harvard Observatory. It was just amazing. So
sorry about that.
So I had done a ton of research on that time period. So when I came up with the idea of this, you know, paranormal detective agency, I had already done the research for the time period. But a friend of mine in my TV development class suggested that I put it into a steampunk universe. And at the time, I didn't know a lot about it. I'd heard of steampunk. So I did some research and discovered he was absolutely right. So I rewrote it and discovered that steampunk was kind of was perfect for me. It was kind of my love of history and science fiction all mixed into one. And I'm off to the races.
Nice.
So Kasai, yeah. Kasai also, because I'm no authority in Japanese mythology. So yes, I had to do quite a bit of research into that. And I think Marcel Dupree, our editor, is a big aficionado of Japanese culture. So I also had him to lean on as well.
Right. Awesome.
All right. So Boston Metaphysical, The Scourge of the Mechanical Men is a continuation of your webcomic. My question is, what made you decide to take this comic directly to print and form instead of as a webcomic first?
That was budgetary. Yeah, it was just budget. Unfortunately, this will probably go online at some point in time, but probably not until we have the next one shot out. So the fact of the matter is, you know, I pay everybody, and my artists, my letterer, everyone gets paid. So I have to monetize this, and going to print and going to Kickstarter is really the best way to monetize it in a short amount of time, and putting it on the web is not.
Very true.
So yeah, I kind of figure my artists and stuff, you know, like to eat and pay the rent.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah, I think they come accustomed to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't blame them. You know, it's a reasonable thing to ask.
How connected is Boston Metaphysical, The Scourge and the Mechanical Man to the webcomic? Do we need to read one to follow the other?
It is a standalone. Scourge of the Mechanical Man is a standalone, but I think you would enjoy it more if you read the first 6 issues first, because then you would understand the dynamics of their relationship. But you would get enough. You would get it. You would get it.
Cool.
I just think you'd have more fun.
So Kasai, going to that for a second, puts a spin on Japanese mythology, and you've already kind of said that you're no aficionado. So how close are you following the mythology as opposed to kind of adding to it and kind of creating your own spin on it, so to speak?
Other than turning a half demigod into a pro wrestler?
Yeah, other than that, yeah.
Other than that, I actually took some of the basic things in the research and used it, the basic conflicts between Kagu, who is Kasai's father, and his sister. And when I read that their mother tasked his sister, Mizuhame, with basically trying to keep a lid on him, on Kagu, I went like, that's perfect, because if she was tasked by their mother to keep a lid on little brother and he decides not to obey, then she has to respond. So obviously how that all develops is completely fictional. But what I always try to do when I write, either in mythology or dealing with real people, is to try to keep the relationship, the thematic relationships accurate. So everything else is fictional.
Okay.
Particularly the pro wrestling stuff.
Yeah, of course.
With Boston Metaphysical, the Scourge of the Mechanical Man, it combines steampunk and supernatural. How is it to balance those two often opposing sides of the world?
To me, it wasn't that difficult as long as you are consistent with your world building. I think that's true with any kind of writing. As long as you're consistent with the world building, you're going to be fine. Like if you've set up in Boston Metaphysical, I've set up a world where supernatural things exist, but also really smart people who make cool gadgets also exist. And sometimes they make cool gadgets to fight the supernatural. And as long as you're consistent with that throughout their universe, I don't see a problem.
Awesome.
The 2 books that you're writing deal with a lot of genres like wrestling, Japanese mythology, superhero, science fiction, steampunk, supernatural, with a mystery. Do you have a favorite genre yourself?
Yeah, I love science fiction. I've been a huge science fiction and fantasy fan since I think my mom read A Wrinkle in Time to me. I think that was probably one of the first books that I remember her actually, reading to me, and then I read on my own. So, I've always loved that genre, and then discovering steampunk, and I actually love military science fiction too. I'm a great fan of that. So if you guys haven't read Jack Campbell, that's a load of fun. And John Scalzi and Lois McMaster Bujold, who's won more Hugos than anybody, but no one seems to know that. She's brilliant. I could give you lists and lists and lists. So yeah, I've been reading them. Oh, Elizabeth Moon, excellent military science fiction. I think it's because the conflict is so organic that it just works. Yeah. It's never forced.
So, side question: favorite science fiction of all time?
Writer, movie?
Okay, both. Favorite writer, favorite movie?
Well, Bujold is my favorite writer.
Okay.
A favorite movie would be Aliens. That's okay. The second movie.
Yes.
Second movie.
You won Chris over right there.
Yeah.
He's a big Aliens
I
fan.
made everybody watch that. We have another show called Media Madness, but we would watch movies. I think I introduced Kat to Aliens. I think that's why we did Aliens.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, let me tell you, my dogs' names are Ripley and Bishop.
Oh, wow.
That is awesome.
What other genre would you like to write about other than the ones that you've already written? You can write any genre out there.
I think I'd like to step into fantasy. Definitely fantasy. I actually have a middle grade fantasy book that I hear the dogs in the background. My husband took our dogs out for a walk, so we don't have that. Yeah, it would be fantasy. I mean, I have dabbled in it, and I'd like to go back and rewrite that particular fantasy novel. That was the first novel I ever wrote, so I kind of looked at as my dry run. And because I have written my second novel was the first novel for Boston Metaphysical Society, and that's actually with an editor right now, and I hope to get that out this year. But that story starts 5 years before the comic starts. So, and I've also done a series of short stories and novellas, which are in an anthology called Boston Metaphysical Society Prelude. And that was a lot of fun because I used that to develop canon for the Boston metaphysical world. And I was able to go in and, dig deeper into the world, do more world building, do some origin stories for not only Samuel, but Caitlin and Granville. One story called The Demons of Liberty Row, or how Granville and Samuel first met and their first case together. And we get to see more of Liberty Row, which is the Negro neighborhood it's a fictional Negro neighborhood that I created in Boston, which you actually see in The Scourge of the Mechanical Men.
Cool.
So that was fun. I wanted to go. We hadn't seen that neighborhood really in anything else yet, so I wanted to go there.
Awesome.
Cool. We have a couple comments from Jesse. You seem to be winning him over with a lot of the things tonight. He says, Aliens, yes! It's always been one of my favorites, not just of the genre, but of all movies. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's at the top of my list. That's when we got these dogs. We were going like, what are we going to name them? What are we going to name them? And my husband just said like, well, why don't we look at your favorite movie? And we're like, yeah, there we go. Because we didn't want to do Hudson. Was it Hudson?
There was a lot of the characters. There was Riggs. There was Hudson. Strasky.
Yeah.
I don't remember all the names myself, and I'm losing them.
But we had one girl dog, one boy dog. So of course, she had to be Ripley. And I don't know, Bishop just worked for him, so we went with Bishop.
Nice.
We have a question from one of the viewers. Let's see. Sky Showman says, if I was a character in your Boston universe and was in a dilemma that needed a good detective, what would sway me to hire the services of Granville and Tesla in particular?
Other than they're two of the smartest people on the face of the planet.
That's a good reason.
Yeah, that kind of sells it right there.
All right. What's up next for you? I mean, are you going to be continuing to focus on these two? Obviously, you've got 3 more issues of Kasai to go through, but do you have anything on the horizon? You mentioned your novel, of course.
Yeah. I have 5 sequential art short stories that are non-Boston Metaphysical that are coming out this year. One that was part of the Fourth Monkey, which was a environmental and issues-oriented anthology. That was fully funded last year, and they're working on production right now. I did a story focused on a bees and pesticide called The Scout, which is a journey of a scout bee. I have another one that's being done right now for the Edgar Allan Poe project, which I think they're coming to Kickstarter in March. And a really fun one for the anthology called Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, Ain't It? From Russell Nolte's Wannabe Press. Melissa Massey is doing the art. She's doing a fabulous job. That will be launched on Kickstarter in the fall. Definitely look at it. These I've seen. This is going to be great. It's going to be so great. But right after this Kickstarter is over, I'm going to disappear for like 3 days.
I don't blame you.
I'm just going to go away. But yeah, I'm sure I'll have editing to do on the novel. And then I was invited to contribute a short story to a steampunk anthology from coming from Luna Press. But that won't be out till next year, but I got to go write it. And then I really want to start outlining a series of Boston Metaphysical novels called The House Wars. You have to understand, in my version, alternate history of the United States, which is actually called the Great States of America, the Civil War I call the House Wars. And my husband has been on me for years to sit down and write this series, and which I really want to do. But of course, on the back burner will probably be the next Boston Metaphysical one-shot for next year, which will probably be either a Samuel and Caitlin story, because I'm just going to focus on like two of the major characters in the one-shots. Mm-hmm. Or it will be in the trade paperback that came out last year, which combines all 6 issues. There is a 10-page short that you'll only find in that trade called Hunter Killer, which is about the crew of a prototype airship, classification Hunter Killer. The name of the airship is called the Philadelphia, and how they are at the beginning of the House Wars. It's like Fort Sumter. Okay. And I may do a one-shot based on those 3 characters in that airship. So there's a lot of things to do. I need to pick and choose wisely. It's all a time management thing.
Go ahead, Jay.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, now that you've had a taste of superheroes, do you think you're going to revisit that at some point?
I think so. I mean, if they're as interesting as Kasai, I have to tell you, my brother probably has the largest collection of graded Daredevil comics in the United States.
Oh, really? Awesome.
And I was never interested in superheroes or comics until I started adapting Boston Metaphysical, and I was introduced to indie comics, and then I just went like, where have these been all my life? I mean, these are crazy good. And I love them. And I just lost my train of thought. I'm like, listen, let's seeing these little trailer, the comments come in over the side here.
Sorry.
What was the question again? This is my second interview today, so.
Just if you were planning on revisiting writing superheroes again.
Oh, superheroes. Yeah. Yeah, if it was set in a world that was interesting. Cool. And I could kind of deal with it my way. Mm-hmm. Again, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a ton of fun. I've turned in the second issue of Kasai, so the whole 4 issues are already mapped out. So I know exactly where this is going, and I love it. I mean, I love the story. I love the team on it. Everyone's doing an outstanding job. So yeah, I can't wait to see it get made.
Cool. We have a couple comments again. Sky Showman, who asked about selling him on your detectives, says, "I'm sold." JLS Jesse says he wonders what would have happened if Tesla was there instead of Burke to help Ripley, Hicks, and Hudson.
Wow. If the real Tesla was there, he may not be terribly helpful. Just because my understanding of him is that he wasn't the most socially adept person. So he may have had a hard time. I mean, he may have been able to figure out a lot of things, but as an action hero, I'm not sure the real Tesla would have handled that too well.
Jesse also has another question that just came in. Exile State Comics, Justin, who is a huge Daredevil fan, says, "Your brother is a cool guy." And then Jesse says, "Could you do genetics as a military application to create your super soldiers?" I say that because you mentioned military sci-fi.
Absolutely. If you've read any of John Scalzi's The Old Man's War, which is the first book in his Old Man's War universe, he pretty much does just that. But what they did was create bodies that were essentially super soldier bodies that anyone from Earth, the elderly who decided that, I don't want to stay on Earth anymore, and they basically volunteered to be in this new army. They get their brain downloaded into this young body, which actually happens to be green. He has them green because there has chlorophyll in the skin, so they can absorb nutrients from the sun. But yeah, if you haven't read Old Man's War by John Scalzi, not only is it funnier as all get out, it is just, Scalzi is probably the master of snark. You'll love it. He does an outstanding job.
Awesome. I'm going to have to look that up. It sounds interesting.
It does.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to wrap up here. So, Madeleine, where can we and the viewers find you on social media? You have any Twitter or anything that you want to put out there?
Sure. Of course, the website is www.bostonmetaphysicalsociety.com. I'm on Facebook, Boston Metaphysical Society, and Twitter is M Holly-Rosing. Instagram is I think it's M Holly. I think it's M Holly1 or M Holly. I always forget. I'm pretty much everywhere. Track.
The Kickstarters and the webcomic will all be put in the comments after this is live. We will post them in the not in the comments, in the description.
Ready. Both links are in the description as we.
Okay. All right. We'll put them. They're going to be in the description. They'll stay there. And do you have any other promotions that you haven't talked about yet that you want to get out there?
Well, there is Kasai. Kasai only runs for another week. It ends next Monday, the 12th, and it could really use a little love right now. So
back to today.
Yeah, you need to go pledge today.
Yep.
You will not be disappointed. This is an amazing book, even though I did write it.
I can vouch for it.
It feels so self-serving, but it is really good. The team on it is excellent, and yeah, you will not be disappointed. And some of the variant covers are just
gorgeous.
Hook.
Yeah,
really
they're stunning, really.
Yeah. So yeah, get over to Kickstarter, type in KASAI, and go pledge.
Cool. All right. So we would like to thank you for taking the time out and coming here. We know this is your second interview today. Hope you had a lot of fun here with us.
I did. Thank you.
We would love to have you back if you ever have anything else that you want to put out there. So please, hit us up. We will always be sure to help you out. And we want to remind everyone to stay around because we're going to stop here, but we will be coming back with the Comic Frontline Live episode number 186, where we're just going to be doing 2 little news pieces that came out. You know, you may not have heard about it. You know, Bendis on Superman and some little film called Avengers. I don't know. We're talking about that trailer for some reason. And then we're going to do our top 5 and all that good stuff. So stick around, people. We will be coming back. So until then, see you in a couple minutes. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.